Hello and welcome back to the William Gomes podcast. I am William Gomes and I'm grateful to have you here. This series is called Reading Seminar 1 and 2, Lacan's Return to Freud Revisited. In the previous episode, we drew a clear distinction between psychoanalysis and psychology. We saw why Jacques Lacan insists that psychoanalysis cannot define itself by adaptation, well being, or therapeutic success, and why it must remain oriented toward truth rather than harmony. In this episode, we take the next decisive step. If psychoanalysis is not psychology, then it cannot operate through observation, behavior, or advice. It must work through a different medium altogether. For Lacan, that medium is speech. At first, this claim can sound obvious. Talking is what happens in analysis. But Lacan's point is not that analysis involves conversation. It is that analysis is structured by speech in a very specific sense, one that must be carefully distinguished from communication. Communication, in its everyday meaning, is the transfer of information from one person to another. It presupposes a message, an intention, and a receiver. Its success is measured by whether the message is understood. Speech, as Lacan uses the term, is something quite different. Speech is not simply what one intends to say, it is an act of address. It positions a subject in relation to another, and crucially, it produces effects that exceed intention. This is why Lacan insists that the unconscious speaks. The unconscious is not a hidden entity inside the mind. It is not a container of meanings waiting to be revealed. It is an effect that appears in a speech precisely where control falters. When someone misspeaks, hesitates, contradicts themselves, or returns obsessively to the same phrase, something speaks that is not fully governed by conscious intention. These are not failures of communication. They are privileged moments of analytic interest. Freud already recognized this when he treated sleeps, jokes, and dreams as meaningful formations. Lacan radicalizes this insight by insisting that speech itself is structured in such a way that it always says more than it means. This has profound consequences for the analytic session. The analytic session is not a space for exchanging information or clarifying experiences. It is a structured situation in which a speech is allowed to unfold without being immediately corrected, guided, or normalized. This is why Lacan places such importance on silence. Silence in analysis is not a lack. It is not indifference. It is not passivity. It is a way of allowing a speech to encounter its own limits. When the analyst refrains from responding too quickly, from explaining, or from reassuring, speech is forced to continue. In doing so, it often begins to reveal something unexpected. Similarly, interruption in analysis is not rudeness. It is not authoritarian. It is a way of punctuating speech, of marking something that has appeared, often without the subject realizing it. In this sense, the analytic session is structured less by dialogue than by address. The analyze and speaks to another whose responses are not predictable. This unpredictability is not accidental. It prevents speech from settling into a narrative that confirms the ego. This also explains why Lacan rejects two common models of analytic work. The first is the behavioral model, which treats speech as an expression of underlying states that can be decoded and corrected. From this perspective, speech is merely a symptom of something else. The second is the expressive model, which treats speech as catharsis. On this view, speaking is valuable because it allows feelings to be released or emotions to be shared. For Lacan, both models miss the point. Analysis does not decode behavior, and it does not aim at expression for its own sake. It works with the speech as a structured act that produces effects independently of intention. This is why understanding, in the ordinary sense, is not the primary aim of analysis. Understanding often functions as a defense. When speech becomes too coherent, too explanatory, or too convincing, it may be doing the work of the ego rather than allowing the unconscious to appear. Lacan is not opposed to meaning, but he insists that meaning must be allowed to emerge indirectly rather than being imposed or clarified prematurely. This is also why analytic listening is so specific. The analyst does not listen primarily for content, they listen for breaks, repetitions, hesitations, contradictions, and insistences. They listen for what returns, for what cannot be easily integrated into a narrative. These features of speech are not errors to be corrected. They are the very sites where analytic work takes place. To say that speech is the medium of analysis, then, is not to make a banal observation. It is to insist that psychoanalysis operates at the level where subjectivity is constituted and destabilized through language. Speech is where the subject appears and disappears. It is where truth emerges indirectly, and it is where the ego's claim to mastery is most easily undermined. This is why Lacan insists that technique must be organized around speech rather than behavior or emotion. The analyst's interventions, silences, and interpretations are all ways of working with speech, not of managing the person. By centering analysis on speech, Lacan preserves Freud's discovery that the unconscious is not something to be explained away, but something that insists, repeats, and disrupts. In the next episode, we will deepen this focus by examining the distinction Lacan draws between what he calls empty speech and full speech, and by clarifying how analytic listening operates beyond understanding. Thank you for listening. This is the William Gomes podcast. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and if you found this episode helpful, you're very welcome to follow, share, leave a comment, or a rating. I'll speak with you again soon.